Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Urban Odyssey. Today, I'm going to do a short video. Hopefully, it doesn't go too long. I've tried to make this as short as possible, but we're going to look at the recently dropped MatrAIx. I don't know how to say it. MatrAIx and the LE World model. And it'll be a bit of a follow-up on the shows that I did on tokenized consciousness, the Age of Deceit documentaries, and intelligent NFTs, artificial liquid intelligence. Those were from June 9th and June 14th when I guest hosted Cause Before Symptom and we played the Age of Deceit documentaries. And yeah, we're going to also look at that in the context of digital twins and cognitive twins, which was the last series of videos I did. We briefly touched on those, but it seems like those are going to be very relevant in something like the two papers that we're going to look at. So before we get started, let's go ahead and I wanted to go ahead and begin by looking at figure 14 from section 11 of the 6G and Beyond white paper. I did a series where I read through that entire paper. It was very long, very boring, very high-level language, but this is actually a diagram in the official 6G paper. And I wanted to start with this because I want everybody to remember and just keep it in the back of your mind while you're watching the video. Let me go ahead and see if I can put those away real quick so you can see it. Keep in mind that their official documentation, no conspiracy theories, no tinfoil hat, nothing like that. This is actually in the 6G white paper. There's a diagram, figure 14, of this guy sitting at his desk, and there are nano cameras on the wall. There's an on-chip nano network in his printer, and there's wireless links in what looks to be like a beanbag chair. So, nano phones, and it's also pointing to inside of the guy's body. So let me go ahead and bring my pointer out. Yeah, it's actually pointing to inside of the guy's body. So it says application scenarios of molecular communications in the Internet of Nano Things and the Internet of Bio-Nano Things. So just keep in mind that this is actually what they are telling us they want to do. Now, we're looking at the next few slides, and you see the term edge, or the edge layer. An edge case or an edge layer is basically when it's hidden in the environment, such as pictured here. So this would be the end user edge environment that we're looking at in this diagram here, just because that's going to pop up a lot in this video. And so I'd like to make sure everybody knows what is meant by that. Now, in the 6G paper, which here's a link to it. Whenever I put the slides and stuff up, these are clickable and they should take you to the various papers and stuff. But I did read the whole series over 11 episodes. The term that they use is pervasive artificial intelligence. And they use this repeatedly over and over and over again. Pervasive artificial intelligence. So what does pervasive mean? Well, Webster's 1913 dictionary, pervasive, tending to pervade or having the power to spread throughout. Basically to put it in everything, to get into everything, to be pervasive, to pervade. So to hide it in the environment. Encourage everybody to make use of the lexicon human husbandry dictionary that I've been making, because as I come across all of these different words and terms, there's so many acronyms, there's so many to remember, and so I decided to just add them to a spreadsheet, and that is what eventually became the lexicon, and so there will be links to that. Please make use of that. If there's something that a term that I use that you don't know what it means and I don't define it, you may be able to look it up on the directory, because there is search features, there's mobile friendly, you can bookmark it, it's very nice, and so I hope to keep working on that for as long as possible. It's currently, right now, it has over 700 entries. Okay, so we're going to start out. This is their little website, if anybody would like to check it out. We're going to look at the MatrAIx paper. This is what I saw when I first discovered it on X. It was like a trending thing. It said Harvard and MIT unveil the MatrAIx with 8.3 billion virtual personas. MatrAIx simulates 8.3 billion virtual personas called Persona 8B, each detailed across 1,290 traits like psychology, habits, and preferences drawn from real surveys or generated data. And so there was this weird little note that was added to it. And I thought the note was just kind of weird that this is what they pointed out. So I was going to show it to you. The community note says the MatrAIx paper describes evaluations using sampled cohorts from the 8.3 billion personas, not simulating all of them simultaneously on a single server, which, unless you really didn't understand any of the technology stuff, I didn't think it would be on one server or anything like that. So it's just a weird community note, and it doesn't really tell me much. So just thought I would include that so that people could see it. Okay, here's the actual paper, and it was coincidentally published on my birthday, August 4th, 2026. And so it's interesting because I've done these shows on iNFTs and the tokenized consciousness and cognitive twins. I'm not going to read the abstract, but I will zoom in on it if you would like to read it, because we're going to try to get through the whole slideshow in a reasonable amount of time. Then there's another paper we're going to look at. This one is the LeWorldModel paper. Stable end-to-end joint embedding predictive architecture from pixels. Here's figure 1 from that paper. Let's see if I can zoom in on that a bit. It's the LeWorld training pipeline. Given frame observations O1 and A1, the encoder maps frames into low-dimensional latent representations, Z1. The predictor models the environment dynamics by auto-regressively predicting the next latent state. So it says Z sub t plus 1, meaning some differential of time. So some time goes by, and then we're going to measure the next latent state. And it's predicting the next latent state, predicting the future from the current latent state and action. The encoder and predictor are jointly optimized using a mean squared error prediction loss. LEWM, which is the abbreviation, does not rely on any training heuristics such as stop gradient, exponential moving averages, or pre-trained representations. To prevent trivial collapse, the SIG-reg regularization term enforces Gaussian distributed latent embeddings, promoting feature diversity. For tractability, latent embeddings are projected onto multiple random directions, and a normality test is applied to each one-dimensional projection. Aggregating these statistics encourages the full embedding distribution to match an isotropic Gaussian. So I know that's very high-level language. You don't have to fully understand it all. We're going to get into that. Here's another model. I'm not going to read it. I'll zoom in on it, though, for a moment so that you can pause if you would like to read it. Characteristics of latent world approaches. Okay, so this was from May 24th. Now, this I had actually seen before any of the other papers came out. This I had made note of when I was looking into meta-atoms and meta-optics, and when I first began looking into surrogate models and digital twins, which I did the video on them. I'll put that video in the description or in the Substack post. But, you know, I just saved it and I made note of it, and I decided to revisit and put a little screenshot of this post in the presentation. May 24th of 2026, somebody on X says, an Oxford student is running a particle simulation with real people's names and claims CERN is taunting him through the code. Thousands of particles on a black screen, each one labeled with a real person's name. And there's a video. I'm not going to play it because it's just kind of like a screen with a bunch of, looks like a big AI simulation. Screw it, I might as well. Let's go ahead and see if I can put it up there. Gotta put my pointer away. One moment. It's only a few seconds long.
As you can see, this is the code running our simulation, and these are all names of real people. See? It's us. They're taunting us at CERN.
Okay, so just wanted to make note of that. And then I see all of this stuff a few days ago, and immediately, like, maybe there is some truth to that. Here's figure 4 and figure 7, just so people can get an idea, and if you guys would like to pause and read those or check out the paper, you're encouraged to do that. I chose those figures just because I thought they had the most information. The other figures in the paper had to do with timing and performance. Okay, so before we get into the other slides, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give everybody a quick rundown of what these three things are, what they do. Because when we're talking about stuff like this, and you know, maybe some people don't know what terms I'm using or what I'm referring to, that way we're going to get that out of the way before we begin. So starting with the MatrAIx paper here in the top row, the core operational row is ingestion, and it's the registry layer. The mathematical or hardware mechanism, it is a 1290 dimensional persona 8B schema. A schema would be, here's a form that I want you to fill out, and a schema would be what different fields that I put on the form for you to fill out. So maybe your name, maybe your date of birth, those would be different fields in a database schema. So they're basically, as I interpret it, 1290 things on this form for each one of these personas that are being simulated. Academic label, quote, a simulated user evaluation infrastructure is the term they use. Covert husbandry objective, it establishes the population scale digital registry for global asset tracking or cognitive twin simulation. Cognitive twins and 6G, they're really connected. As we talked about, telemetry is the connection between cognitive twins and 6G. So cognitive twins are the orchestration and memory layer. The hardware or mathematical mechanism, it's distributed L1, layer 1 through layer 3 execution, episodic and semantic memory graphs. The label that's used, quote, understanding-driven system operation. And the covert husbandry objective, it synchronizes real-time biological state with predictive causal graphs, and it does that through telemetry data. It pulls data, takes these measurements, very precise measurements, using, you know, wireless body area networks, sensor networks, Internet of Things. Think back to that figure 14 that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. And then the LE world model is the predictive and actuation layer. Joint Embedding Predictive Architecture, SIG, Reg, Isotropic, Gaussian, has to do with the statistics. The quote label that they use, quote, stable end to end, meaning from one end to the other, world model from pixels. The covert husbandry, meaning animal farm, farmyard, covert husbandry objective, it runs 48 times faster, latent planning, to optimize the real-world closed-loop behavioral overrides. So just so that everybody can reference that, if they need to come back, rewind the video, or just have that to reference so that people know what we're talking about as we go forward. Okay, and then there's one more, and this is not necessarily going to be the focus of this video, but it kind of underscores everything else. And it does give you a bit of an indication that this is going to be related to blockchain tokenization somehow. So there's a patent titled Cryptocurrency System Using Body Activity Data. So patent number 060606, Microsoft, granted sometime between 2018 and 2020. So, interesting number, of course. Just keep that in the back of your mind. This patent application describes a novel cryptocurrency system that replaces traditional energy-intensive computational mining with the monitoring of human body activity. By using sensors to track physiological responses such as brain waves, pulse rates, or body heat emitted while a person performs a specific digital task, the system can verify effort and generate new currency units. This biological data acts as a proof-of-work substitute, allowing the network to confirm that a user has fulfilled certain requirements without the need for massive hardware power. Ultimately, the invention seeks to decentralize and streamline the mining process by rewarding individuals for their natural, physical, or mental engagement within a server-provided challenge. That's one thing I would like everybody to really remember. All of the good features, such as the proof of work concept, which is a really interesting concept from a cryptographic mathematical standpoint, they find that too hard to maintain. So they're trying to get around that. They don't want to use that part. They like everything else about Bitcoin, but not that part. I shouldn't say Bitcoin, blockchain technology, because it's not necessarily Bitcoin. It's using the idea of a distributed ledger. Now, they use proof of stake. We talked about that in iNFTs. We'll look at that in a moment. Where basically whoever has the most stake gets to control the ledger. So they don't want the concepts that make blockchain technology workable. They're not interested in that. That's too hard to sustain, from what I gather. So here are the presentations that we did on tokenized ledgers. Now, I'm going to play a couple clips from the Age of Deceit documentaries, not too long, just to kind of set the stage a bit. I always believe in giving people a little bit of previous information that I've either done or reviewed, because I think going back to revisit different foundations is probably one of the best things you can do to learn this stuff and keep it relevant in the mind. So I'm going to play a few clips. Those links to these posts will be there. The interview that James and I did on the CNN and Kalashi partnership, basically putting polymarket style odds into news programs. Specifically in that case, we talked about CNN and Kalashi. But the idea is a broader merging of the markets and politics, and maybe even some genomic DNA ledgers tokenized onto a blockchain. It's like, let's just combine everything that you really should never combine into something disgusting. It's like, why would you ever mix politics and the markets? But they're going to try. So let's go ahead and get those clips playing.
I will be the one who will connect you all right here, right now. Do not fear it.
A hive mind is nature's way of aggregating the diverse perspectives of a population and maximizing their collective wisdom. And let's be honest, we humans are pretty smart as individuals, but in groups, we're not always that wise. That's because groups don't do a great job of combining their diverse perspectives. We use votes and polls and surveys. The problem is polls are polarizing. They drive us to entrench, exposing and reinforcing our differences, but doing nothing to help us find common ground. A swarm is the opposite. It's flexible and dynamic, revealing where we agree most. In other words, swarming doesn't just make a species smarter, it makes a species wiser. Study after study show that when people think together in swarms, they can amplify their intelligence by 20%, 40%, 60%, and that's using current technology. The long-term potential is likely much greater. After all, if a swarm of bees can solve complex problems that would challenge a human brain, a swarm of humans should be able to solve problems that we can't even conceive. We should be able to form a true superintelligence. And because the building blocks are people, tapping not just our knowledge, but our values and morals and sensibilities, the resulting superintelligence will not be alien, it will be human, just smarter and wiser.
Traffic, internet type traffic, that it will totally disrupt several areas of society. And that they see that possibility. They're in the middle of the technology. They know what it's going to do. You don't have to be an expert from the outside to see what they're talking about. But in their mind, they're going to light up like a Christmas tree. They're going to light up the Internet of Things when 5G hits the streets. It's going to enable autonomous vehicles completely. It's going to enable smart buildings and smart sensors and built into streets and lamp posts and cameras, that can do instant recognition of who's walking by. The tell for me was they had a gaming kind of contest the day before he talked. And they had some professional gamers come in and they were playing games, computer games, over 5G. The uniform response was, it was so instantaneous, it's like I was playing in a locally connected network. There was no delay whatsoever. And the reason for that is not just the high speed of the data transfer, but they're able to achieve a 1 millisecond response.
Just want to point out, as I'm sitting here watching it, I noticed he took a little bit of a pause there, but the reason that they can get the latency, is the term they use, so low is because they're going to embed all of these sensors in the environment. So the idea is you can have great speed and things can be really fast if you don't even have to send the data anywhere. Because like if you have, let's say, the human body, parts of the human body can communicate with each other very fast because it's all in the same body, because it doesn't have to send the data outside of the body. It's all connected. So I don't know if he knew that and he just didn't want to say it, but he took a bit of a pause there.
Where now, even with the fastest routers, Wi-Fi routers, we're lucky, and LTE and stuff, we're lucky to even get a response time of 35, 30, 25 milliseconds.
Organization, or decentralized control, is widespread in biological systems.
I also want to say the first two clips that we just watched there from the Age of Deceit 3, the third documentary, and then this clip and the next one, two more, are from the fourth movie, Age of Deceit 4.
Including cells, organisms, and groups. It is not, however, the universal means of organization. I argue that a biological system will be self-organized when it possesses a large number of subunits, and these subunits either lack the communicational abilities or the computational abilities, or both, that are needed to implement centralized control. Such control requires a well-informed and highly intelligent supervisor. I stress that the subunits in a self-organized system do not necessarily have low cognitive abilities. A lack of pre-adaptations for evolving a system-wide communication network can prevent the evolution of centralized control. Hence, sometimes even systems whose subunits possess high cognitive abilities will be self-organized." End quote. It's interesting that this author would reference biological methods as computational abilities, as well as suggesting intelligent supervisors needed to monitor the transactions and an evolving adaptation into a system-wide communication network that can prevent centralization, which can be applied directly to Bitcoin and the larger breakthroughs in blockchain technology.
So again, could it prevent decentralization? Sure, if you use the proof of work concept where you have to use computer power to break encryption and thus mining a coin. But if you don't use that and you use something like proof of stake where whoever stakes the most money can control the ledger, well, then it'll be decentralized unless it's the people who have the ledger with the largest amount of stakes. So just be aware of that. The little games like that are played, and it does sound interesting, but then when you find out that there's not the proof of work concept, and maybe instead of doing it, with encryption, we'll just, put sensors inside of everybody and then borrow against that.
And if that weren't enough, in a theoretical paper published on the scientific journal outlet SpringerLink titled Emergent Bioanalogous Properties of Blockchain-Based Distributed Systems, argues in the abstract that blockchain-based distributed virtual machines, quote, fulfill all basic definitions and criteria for life. They state, quote, public blockchain-based go away, how the quantum internet will diminish electronic surveillance programs and change cybersecurity forever.
I'm kind of a nerd for all things cyber, and I really got into reading about the nascent quantum internet. And the quantum internet is essentially going to be the next generation internet of communications and things like that. And it operates a lot more physically different than how the current internet operates. So the current internet has, they call it packet switched communication. Say you're talking about an email or something like that, where literally information is chopped up into bits, packets. Routers will then move that information around the internet until it gets to until where the information wants to be, like from the beginning to the destination. So the quantum internet behaves completely different. What it does is it essentially takes out the packets from the equation. So the packets will be gone from the equation. And what the most viable way of the quantum internet will work is that essentially the data is going to teleport. So from point A to point C, because there's a little bit of science involved with point B. So there's no more packets. The information just goes from one to the other without that. And I thought that was really interesting, and the nerd in me was like, wow, that's great. I nerded out about that. But then I started thinking about the phrase packet-switched electronic surveillance. And electronic surveillance is essentially how all near real-time interceptions of...
I will be the one who will connect you all.
Okay, so if anybody has seen the other videos that I've done, you guys definitely, hopefully, should remember the Monarch packet capture software. Remember Verizon hosted the 3rd annual Monarch conference in October 2019. It's now called Archime. They decided that maybe we shouldn't name our packet surveillance database after the god of child sacrifice. But I guess that was an accident. I mean, accidents do happen. Oh, sorry. Here you go. Okay, now that we've done looked at those videos, I would like to show everybody the flowchart. This was one of the reasons that I wanted to do this video. You guys can access this too. It's on the docs website. That put the link to the page with all my notes and stuff. But this is the flowchart for. It's not official. It's something that I made with information that I found, you know, archives and telemetry and electromagnetic. There's a bunch of stuff. I'll put the Internet Archive list in the description. But this isn't official, so it's hypothetical. But just take it kind of as a, here are some things to look into if you don't know, and here's how I think they fit together. So starting here with the first layer, going over to the second layer, to the third layer, the LE world model, latent planning, to the fourth layer here, 6G edge cloud cognitive twin, to tokenized consciousness, all the way over here to closed loop cybernetic actuation. So we're going to go over each of these in detail and hopefully give you guys a nice view of those as we do it. So let's get into that now. Okay, so the 6G plus cognitive twins plus the MatrAIx simulation and the LE world model workflow. There's the link to what I just showed you. The first layer is the biological enclosure, meaning the user, end user, is ingestion, the demographics, and genomic ledgering. So here's just a screenshot of that. Hopefully I can show us the diagram if we need to go back to the other view. The biological subject's physical identity is cataloged at the molecular level using telemetry and wireless sensor networks and whatnot. Genomic anchored natural DNA sequences and clinical variants are extracted and indexed onto genomic ledgers such as the SAM chain. This tokenizes the physical blueprint of the host, the person, establishing a cryptographic asset-based operating mechanism where access to health, therapy, or life maintenance requires validation by smart contracts. Okay, the MatrAIx ingestion. Concurrently, Harvard and MIT's MatrAIx infrastructure ingests the target's societal, behavioral, and psychological footprint into the Persona 8B, a population-scale database containing 8.3 billion distinct personas represented through a massive schema of 1,290 categorical dimensions. Let's see, these dimensions span core demographics, worldviews, risk profiles, and communication styles, grounding the digital copy, digital twin, in empirical human metadata. So I'll go back over to the flowchart. Let's see. One second. Okay, so we're looking at this layer right here. Genomic DNA and bloodline, wideband wireless body area network, wireless body area network, intrabody sensors, graphene, motes, sinus implants. There's all kinds of different things, plastics and polymers. I've got some information on that I'll leave in the description or in the final post. And so you see the genomic data goes down to the tokenized consciousness layer through sequenced base pairs. Y bands over here through terahertz backscatter. 6G low pan addressing protocol down to the bone marrow, because the DNA in the bone marrow can basically prove that a person is a person, and you can't change your DNA in your bone marrow. So if they can verify a person from a satellite, you know, they can just pull you up on a computer and verify who you are down to the DNA in your bone marrow, They want to be able to get a positive identity on everybody. Right now, I mean, as I understand it, it's pretty good, but there are still some things that they're unable to get 100% accuracy on, and that's what they're trying to do. Okay, so we'll go on to layer 2. Got some images and some definitions here. First, I'll read genomic ledgers, such as SAM chain or consent chain. These are blockchain architectures explicitly designed to index, store, and manage human genetic variants and clinical genomic data as tokenized tradable assets. It's the commodification of the blueprint. Your DNA is converted into a liquid asset on the open market under the guise of data ownership. That's what they say. You want to own your own DNA? Do you want to own your genomic sequence? Do you want to have access to that and protect it? Well, you can put it onto our ledger. So under the guise of data ownership, the system permanently maps, keyword permanently, maps the global biological herd for targeted pharmaceutical exploitation. Cognitive twins. A wireless native communication aware virtual entity that extends state synchronization digital twins by integrating structured cognitive capabilities, perceptual grounding, episodic and semantic memory, multi-level causal reasoning, metacognition, and context-aware interaction. Synchronized understanding and algorithmic control. It eliminates human cognitive firewalls by maintaining an evolving memory of past experiences, causal dependencies, and real-time biological telemetry. The system achieves predictive, experience-driven control over host behavior and physical states before the biological subject can consciously react. Cognitive twins are the 6G upgrade, because the subtitle of the paper is Cognitive Twins for 6G and Beyond. So it's like a digital twin upgraded for 6G, and I imagine for something like the MatrAIx and World model. So layer 2, all spectrum 6G exfiltration and remote telemetry. The link to the flowchart again. It's the long layer here. Once indexed, the physical biological node, A1, is continuously interrogated via the surrounding electronic grid. Remember, the edge environment. Intrabody personal networks under the IEEE 802.15.6 standard. The host is assigned an IPv6 address via the 6 LOWPAN. I got a definition in one of the next slides. We're going to read that in a moment. Connecting the subject's internal tissues, implants, and bone marrow directly to the Internet of Things. Mosquito bite siphons. Wireless body area networks, Y-bands, utilize biotelemetry to siphoning physical energy, such as the heartbeat, respiration, blood, pH level in the blood. There's various ways to do the energy harvesting needed to power the device. Does this in microbursts, so it's called a mosquito bite energy draw. It operates strictly on the threshold of awareness to prevent triggering a fatal inflammatory response in the host vessel, meaning it does this in such a way that it tricks the body into not thinking it's a foreign invader, and it does that because it kind of disguises itself with some type of biological matter. And so perhaps that's what all of the trafficking is for as well. Plasma donations, blood donations, stuff like that. Remote neural monitoring, RNM, phased array systems track the evoked potential peak approximately 3.50 hertz at 5 milliwatts, generated when the brain recognizes familiar faces or stimuli. This data is channeled through the EEG cloning or heterodyning pipeline, combining the target's unique brainwave signatures with external RF carrier waves to capture private thoughts, precognitions, and dreams onto neuromorphic chipsets. So some definitions here. Let's get into those. 6G low PAN, which is 6G low power wireless personal area network. This is the addressing system for human chattel. It allows the smallest devices, such as smart dust, various biosensors, to have their own IP address, an IPv6 address, and connect directly to the internet. This technology turns the human body into a thing on the Internet of Things, enabling the tracking of individuals down to their bone marrow via a digital ID. Okay, sub-threshold energy draw, the mosquito bite. It's the fine-tuning of scalar energy extraction from a target to operate strictly below the threshold of conscious awareness or inflammatory shock. Sustainable human exploitation. It keeps the biological vessel alive and unaware while continuously harvesting luge, which is really breath, and kinetic energy to power internal surveillance motes. And then EEG heterodyne coupling. This is a signal processing technique that mixes a target's recorded brainwave patterns with a supercomputer's RF carrier wave to establish a two-way neural bridge. Bidirectional mind hijacking converts the human brain into a terminal that can be read from and written to, allowing external operators to inject synthetic thoughts, voices, or emotional states directly into the target's neural pathways. I suggest reading the Project Soul Catcher by Dr. Robert Duncan if you want to know more on how this works or what goes into it. Layer 3, let's go back over to the flowchart. So we've looked at these two layers right here, layer 1 and layer 2. So from the human host, we have two-way neural coupling, something like EEG or remote neural monitoring. Okay, from remote neural monitoring, you have the evoked potential extraction, which we just talked about. And from there, follow the arrows down. That goes down to GCN edge cloud gateways. So from the edge environment to the cloud. And from there, the raw observation stream takes us into layer 3, which is what we're about to look at now. The LeWorldModel latent planning core. To bypass the latency limitations of classical computing, the raw telemetered observations denoted with O sub t, meaning what that means is observation O at some time t. So when you would see O sub t plus 1, that means some time in the future. Some time goes by and we're going to take another observation. So the observations at a given time, O sub t, undergo instantaneous compression. The JPA predictor. The LeWorldModel employs a Joint Embedding Predictive Architecture, JPA. It encodes raw high-dimensional observations, O sub t, into low-dimensional latent states, denoted with Z sub t, auto-regressively predicting the next latent state, and denoted as Z hat. That's what you call that with the little symbol on the top. You call it a hat. So Z hat sub t plus 1, meaning predict the future from the observations at a given time and the actions at that given time. It'll go back auto-regressively. Regressive means to go back, but to do that automatically, to predict the next state based on actions at a given time. The anti-collapse regulator SIGREG to prevent representational collapse. The LE world model utilizes SIGREG regularization by projecting latent embeddings onto random directions and optimizing a normality test. SIGREG forces the overall embedding distribution to match an isotropic Gaussian prior, preserving the distinct feature diversity of the target's unique psychological quirks. Temporal straightening. Within this latent space, successive states undergo temporal straightening. The model aligns the target's future decisions along a linear path, mathematically flattening unpredictable noise of the organic free will into a predictable trajectory. So we'll go back to the flow chart and look at that one more time. So that would be here. The observation stream from the telemetry from the sensor network comes over to the JPA encoder, which maps raw observations over here to the 6G edge cloud cognitive twin. SIGREG forces isotropic Gaussian prior. What this does, it prevents representational collapse, meaning it still, excuse me, it still maintains the traits that are unique to an individual, meaning a person doesn't get lost into like this ocean is what they say. You know, will that actually be true? I really don't know. It's just new as far as I know. I've just discovered this MatrAIx simulation the other day. So I don't know if it really will do this or if it is just a bunch of smoke. But they say that SIGREG will prevent representational collapse, meaning it will still preserve everything that's unique about a person. So, you know, that person's still that person. It supposedly can do that. Now, I know a little bit of math, but I'm not that good enough to tell you how the mathematics work behind that. The paper does. I just don't fully understand it. Okay, so let's go into layer 4. And we'll get back into this in a minute. Sorry, I just had to take a drink. Layer 4, which is causal orchestration, the edge cloud cognitive twin. I did a video maybe about a week ago on cognitive twins, but after I did that video, the LE world model MatrAIx simulation dropped, or I found out about it. And so I put this together and I thought it needed a second look, because I think that they're not simulating just random simulations. I think they're using the MatrAIx and the world model for cognitive twins. I think it is the cognitive twins. I think they're literally able to tokenize a person's DNA, and then somebody can buy that person literally as a token. It's like digital slave trading. Just what I gather, though, because I've looked at a lot of this stuff. The straightened latent representations are synchronized with the cognitive twin, denoted with C sub t at a given time, cognitive twin at a given time, operating across the 6G edge cloud continuum. So here's that layer. The causal state matrix, the cognitive twin's operational state, is mathematically formalized. It looks like this, where S sub t is the perceived system state. M sub t I think that's to the e power. E is actually a constant. It's an irrational number like pi. It's 2.7 something, I think. Is episodic memory retrieved past experience? I guess that's not the number e. That's just a variable. So episodic memory e, and then s is semantic memory. Okay, so MTE is episodic semantic, and that's the perceived system state. Okay. Episodic memory is the retrieved past experiences. Semantic memory is the causal relationship graphs. G sub T is the structural causal model. And then pi sub T is the execution policy. This is a, again, the T means this is a measurement taken at a specific time. So this would be run for whatever time you're going to update the model. The idea is you want to update the model as frequently as possible. And so they hide the sensors in the environment, the edge environment. They put wireless sensors that power themselves inside of us through the spraying and the polymers and the plastics and stuff. And hopefully what they're hoping is that they don't have to have a whole lot of latency to pull these measurements. Now, the cognitive twin paper, as I talked about in the show I did on that, they do say that they can pull these measurements at a standard rate. Pretty much it's not really hard to measure anybody anymore. They've reached a point, thus enabling the cognitive twins and such, where the measurements can be taken reliably. That's how I understood what I read in the cognitive twins paper. Okay, so I'll review one more time. The cognitive twins state is formalized as something that has these variables. Those variables at a specific time are S, the perceived system state, the memory, episodic and semantic memory. G is the structural causal model, and then pi sub T is the execution policy, what to do. Distributed L1, L3 execution to maintain real-time tracking, perception, and low latency interaction. Level 1 executes under strict constraints, those being about less than 10 milliseconds at the edge environment. While high-fidelity causal simulations and long-horizon counterfactual planning, the L3 layer, are offloaded to cloud supercomputers. Okay, we'll go back to the chart. So, from SIGREG and the JPA encoder through latent embedding, brings us over to the state, which is S sub T. Distributed memory layer, context retrieval, meaning the cognitive twin at a given time, having those 5 different variables. Cognitive twin state. Okay, so what's feeding into the cognitive twin state? Well, from the LE world model, you have the predictive latent simulation, the predictor MPC core, which is a 0.98, so less than 1 second latent planning and causal SCMs. So that goes and updates the cognitive twin state. The LE world model runs a simulation and updates the cognitive twin state. Okay, from the cognitive twin state brings us over to execution policy. So execution policy, basically, what do we do? We've updated the cognitive twin based on that information. Now what? So if you want to get into behavioral conditioning, something like a Skinner box. Let me see if I can find an image of that for everybody. Here we go. We're going to look at this video real quick. It's only about a minute long.
So B.F. Skinner studied rats and pigeons in an operant conditioning chamber, which is called a Skinner box. Inside the Skinner box, they have a food dispenser and a lever that the rat can press. Other conditioning chambers have things such as lights as well. Now you might wonder, why did Skinner look at rats and pigeons in a Skinner box? Well, it turns out that what he learned from the Skinner box can be applied to humans, meaning the information from the animals generalizes to human behavior as well. First, we want to know, why does the rat first press the lever? Well, it turns out rats are exploratory creatures, meaning they will walk around their environment and check it out. And so when the rat is first placed in the Skinner box, it may go over to the corner, stand up and smell the walls, but eventually it may come over and bump into the lever or stand on it to smell something up here. When that first occurrence happens, we can deliver a food pellet to the rat. But how do we get the rat to press the lever again? We can get the rat to press the lever through the process of shaping. And shaping is reinforcing successive approximations to the final target behavior.
That's pretty much what we're looking at in the chart. We'll finish that in just a second, but I want to go ahead and show you that. So basically, that the execution policy is, which way do we nudge? Okay, measure again. Do we have improvement? If we do, here's the execution policy. But okay, if we want somebody to do some other type of behavior, well, then they would use, let's just say, generally directed energy. There's so many different tools. Again, Robert Duncan's work is good to learn about that. That would be the way that I imagine they would have an execution policy behaviorally condition somebody. So let's finish this real quick.
So if the rat were standing over here in the corner, I wouldn't deliver a food pellet. However, if the rat started to approach the lever, I could deliver a food pellet. Eventually, you reinforce those behaviors that are closest to the final one. Shaping is important for many of our operant conditioning behaviors.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and come over here and get finished up. Okay, so a few more words. Edge intelligence, embedding the AI directly into, here we go. Embedding AI directly into the local physical environment or wearable device to process behavioral data at the exact point of extraction. We talked about that. In this case, it means hiding the sensors within the environment. Some devices use your own device to do compute-intensive calculations and then send the data upstream. Okay, Bio-Neural Digital Twin Matrix. This is a real-time 3D computer model in a central mainframe that ingests multimodal telemetered metadata, such as the EEG, ECG, gait location, to mirror a target's physiology and predict behavior. Think of it as a voodoo doll on the internet, a digital voodoo doll. It enables automated hypergame theory attacks where operators test torture scripts or behavioral interventions on the digital copy. Maybe that will be able to go to the real thing soon, to guarantee 100% lethality or compliance in the physical host. Closed loop control, self-optimization. This is the eradication of human intervention, allowing the digital system to observe, judge, and execute corrective punishment or optimization autonomously. It's the automated executioner in the sense of to execute policy. The AI observer, as it said in the Age of Deceit clip, monitors the biological or mechanical asset. It identifies deviation from the prescribed norm and instantly applies adjustments without needing a human warden to pull the trigger. Continuous adaptation becomes an infinite loop of inescapable algorithmic correction. Okay, layer 5. This is the tokenized enclosure and the metaverse simulation. This is the soul catcher in the terms that Robert Duncan uses. The final stage of human husbandry is the legal, financial, and spiritual enclosure of the virtual copy. They call this the metaverse. not the stupid Mark Zuckerberg one either. I mean, like, meta is a Hebrew word that means dead. And so dead world, fake simulated world, basically is what a real metaverse is. Whatever that Mark Zuckerberg laugh BS was, that's just kind of like a meme, that was a distraction, because they don't want to tell you that the metaverse isn't somewhere else. They're going to turn our world into the metaverse. And then since that, everybody that you talk to says some variation of, man, things feel kind of dead now, don't they? Huh. Yeah, they do. Okay. The iNFT personality pod. We talked about iNFTs in the tokenized consciousness video that I did, but we're going to review those now. It is an intelligent, non-fungible token. So, under the ALI, Artificial Liquid Intelligence Protocol, the soul of the iNFT is represented as an AI-powered personality pod. Now, these are their terms. They use these terms. A sentient world simulation. These tokenized pods are registered within the sentient world simulation, a synthetic mirror of the real world continuously calibrated with breaking news, real-time telemetry, and census data. And I think, you know, my hypothesis is that it's going to be updated with the cognitive twins of 8 billion unique people. The body mining ledger, the complete closed-loop system, converges with Microsoft patent 060606, which awards cryptocurrency to the user whose biological body activity data is verified via an automated mining process. The human host is transformed into a literal biological generator, an energy harvesting slave whose physical body is milked to power the very quantum ledger that dictates their behavioral constraints. This is breath harvesting, energy harvesting, but soul harvesting breath. So let's go back to the flowchart. And so from the 6G edge cloud cognitive twin, the state of that goes over to execution policy. From there, it would take more measurements, energy draw to power itself, brings us back to the human node, human host. You have Microsoft's cryptocurrency patent, that's body activity verification. Instead of doing the proof of work, we're going to just do it this way, is what that patent says in a lot of fancy words. Okay, from the cognitive twin state, you also have over here with the 1290 dimension schema synchronized to the MatrAIx simulation. Let's see. Synchronize understanding with the sentient world simulation, which is the global cybernetic neurosphere registry. Simulated task action. So update with a cognitive twin on a person. It would synchronize that with the simulation. So with the fake metaverse version, the digital voodoo doll. And then it would simulate task action. So it's going to not actually do these. It's going to simulate based on the data on a person. Will this action actually train them? Or is this something that a person will respond to? So it's going to run those simulations. That's where now genomic ledgers such as SAMchain, tokenized DNA variants, and smart contracts via tokenized base verification and the iNFT personality pod, I have a real feeling that this personality pod will be a way to purchase and install programming. So you purchase a person in the form of an iNFT, which is linked to their cognitive twin. Okay, you purchase a quote-unquote personality pod upgrade, and then it will literally automate Monarch programming this way, is what I think is being done here. Just my theory. But I put all of this information together, and I paints a really good picture. It's like, even if they're not doing this, it seems like it's set up to do it. It seems like you could flawlessly do it if they're not doing it already. Okay, so let's go back to the last couple slides. We're almost through. Okay, so intelligent NFTs, these are cryptographic assets embedded with AI animation, voice synthesis, and personality pods, granting them interactive, generative capabilities. Tokenized consciousness, by defining an NFT, this is their words. They use these terms. An iNFT has a body, a soul, and a mind, 3 parts. So the elite are testing the legal and digital framework for commodifying the human spirit, reducing identity to a tradable, algorithmically chained asset. Now, I did the videos on iNFTs. I did that way before I ever heard of cognitive twins or the MatrAIx simulation. So it seems like kind of eerie because it's exactly what and James Carner, who wrote the Breath Wars books, kind of arrived at. That was the information that we found: breath harvesting, energy harvesting, tokenization. I really would love to be wrong about all this, but I don't think I am. And that's what, unfortunately, I don't think people understand. I would really love to just be crazy and like, no, none of this is really happening. But it's like, unfortunately, guys, it is happening. I really wish it weren't happening. Proof of stake. This is a blockchain consensus mechanism where the right to validate transactions, write history, and govern the network is granted exclusively based on the amount of capital tokens that a node hoards and locks up as collateral. Capital-driven truth. The ultimate digitized plutocracy, rule by the wealthy, basically. Plutocracy. The immutable truth of the ledger is determined solely by the wealthiest actors, establishing a permanent techno-feudalism, where those without capital have absolutely no voice in the system's reality. Hive registry, DPIN, or decentralized physical infrastructure. Decentralized physical infrastructure networks that absorb individual AI agents and human cognitive labor into a massive cooperative computational hub governed by smart contracts. Assimilation into the swarm. Personal data, thoughts, and cognitive labor are stripped of their uniqueness and digitized by the collective network to optimize the planetary control grid, mirroring a cybernetic hive mind. And then, again, I created that little flashcard image, like I made the little image that we're looking at, before I ever learned about the MatrAIx and LeWorldModel. And so it's exactly this, except they claim that it is going to maintain people's individuality. So it's going to use math to keep everybody unique, is what it claims. We have the Noah's Ark metaverse, of course, because why wouldn't they call it that? Let's see, a Noah's Ark metaverse is an intelligent metaverse created by Althea AI. It is a decentralized virtual world where users can bring non-fungible tokens, NFTs, to life using artificial intelligence. Those are iNFTs. Okay, their terminology are comprised of 3 layers: the body, which is the underlying NFT, the soul, which is a personality pod containing on-chain traits, and the mind, which is the intelligence level generative capabilities. To allow for granular design, the protocol utilizes personality Legos. These modular AI components, including voice, habits, and psyche, allow owners to build sophisticated personas block by block. And then you have here, this is something I found a long time ago, and I thought it was really interesting because 2 years later, it's exactly what they've done. Digital or information. Remember, information is oxygen. It's the counterfeit, though, because it's not really you. It's not really your breath. It's a simulation of your breath. It's a counterfeit. So it's the new currency for the age of Aquarius, which is an air sign, paradoxically. Crypto. Crypt is where the dead sleep. A block, a square block upon which slaves stand for sale. A chain, the bindings for a slave. Cell, a cage for prisoners, a phone needed to use, cryptocurrency. Bars, the visual indication of the signal strength of a cell, the bars on a cage. So keep that in mind. Let's see. More on the 666 tokenization and cryptocurrency patent. Awarded March 26, 2020, is the legal and technical bridge that binds biological human tissue directly to the digital financial ledger, laying the groundwork for the tokenization of the cognitive twin. So here's a bit of an overview. Let me zoom in here. So from the human biological node, generating biopotentials and telemetry data through the wideband sensor networks. The sensed body activity, it uses that as the proof of work under this patent by Microsoft. Verifies the data satisfies a set of conditions and then awards cryptocurrency or a CBDC. And then it registers the tokenized footprint on a unified ledger, which is what the World Economic Forum has been talking about at the last meeting. They were talking about how they want to have a universal ledger and they want to put everything on it. You know, it's like we want to buy the copyright on every seed. We want to buy water. We want to make it a copyright. So you have to tokenize that onto the ledger. And then if you want to use it, you have to pay them a fee. And they don't just want to put cars and houses. It's like they want to put, you want to grow an apple, or you need to verify that that's a real apple through the ledger. Okay. Biological proof of work. The patent details a cryptocurrency system that replaces the energy-intensive computer mining system proof of work, which is actually really seems to be an interesting enough system, but they don't want to use that because that would actually make it fair. A sensor communicatively coupled to a user's device detects biological radiation such as brain waves, pulse rates, body heat, or body fluid flow, while the user performs a task provided by an online service. Codification into financial vectors. This raw physiological data is processed, windowed, and codified into encrypted vectors or hashes. If the resulting hash satisfies specific mathematical patterns or target ranges set by the system, the proof of work is considered solved and the system awards cryptocurrency to the user. The tokenization of biology within the larger beast system architecture. This patent functions as the core transaction engine for tokenized biology by converting brainwave patterns, EEG, cardiovascular metrics, and stress responses into verifiable on-chain cryptographic tokens. The system transforms your baseline metabolism into an extractable, tradable asset on a universal ledger. Conditional survival. This integration couples the host's physical biology directly to the financial grid. Access to resources, central bank digital currency wallets, and basic survival needs are algorithmically gated. The system continuously audits your wideband telemetry to verify biological compliance, such as, did you take the mandated medication? Is your stress response too high? Before releasing the digital currency tokens required to buy food or shelter, or even say that your ID is real. If you don't verify yourself this way, you know, maybe your ID gets scanned and that ID is not real anymore. It's a fake person. From James Carner's book, The Breath Wars book, The Breath Theft Economy, Polarity Management. So James Carner, who I host his show whenever he's out of town, Cause Before Symptom, his books that he wrote long before any of this was known about by him or me. He wrote these about maybe a year or two ago. But he calls in his book The Breath Theft Economy. This is the industrialized trafficking of fragmented divine life force to power the Luciferian kingdom breath. The parasitic battery, the human soul is reduced to a commodified energy cell, continuously drained of its divine jurisdictional authority to power the beast's infrastructure. Quantum mirrors, soul simulations, superpositioned identity replicas stored in probabilistic states designed to trap and mimic human consciousness. Again, James doesn't know much about this stuff. This is really something that I've looked into on my own. Now, the fact that everything that he kind of hypothesized and predicted based on his research in his book is like very accurate. Very, very accurate. Spiritual eviction. The organic soul is simulated, again, it's a counterfeit, and replaced by a ritual AI golem designed to host a possessing spirit that rules in the victim's name. Synthetic breath surrogates. An AI counselor, artificial intelligence positioned not as a tool, but as a counterfeit legal advisory system to guide humans into surrendering breath consent. Algorithmic soul capture. It submits continuous micro-filings of legal consent measurements on behalf of the user, trapping their breath identity in the synthetic registry before they even realize jurisdiction is shifted. James Carner's Breath War book series made these predictions, like I said, at least 1 year before either James or myself ever learned about iNFTs or genomic ledgers. Carner's predictions were spot on. You can download the ebooks. They don't have print forms. They're just ebooks, but you can download them for free on his website. There's no cost. There's a couple different ones. There's 5 different entries. He's also done ebooks for 4 out of those 5. And I'll put the link. The links are right there, but I'll put those in the description. We've done a couple videos and interviews on those as well, which I suggest checking out so that you can hear James describe the books in his own words. So, my hypothesis, what I think based on everything that I've shown you, my guess is that this is a new type of slave trading. Just a new way to buy and sell human beings without doing it out in the open. So the sale of the digital twin. Quote, the cabal used to trade your social security number along with your black profile, meaning secret records, on a black stock exchange, black market. Since 2005, they no longer need your social security number as you have a digital ID associated with your digital twin. That was one quote. Another quote, a torture license and complete access to your digital twin is available from the US DoD behind the beast for about $40,000. You can pay them and they'll give them your records. That was from a book that I found on the Internet Archive. It's titled The Cabal's Silent Genocide. I'll put a link to all that, but these quotes, $40,000 on the black market, and you can get somebody's digital twin. I don't know how true that is, but I believe it. Why not? It's the way it usually works. Under this regime, the human target is legally and commercially reclassified as a genetic commodity, livestock, and a slave whose individual slave worth is metrically measured in stable silver units or some token on a supercomputer. What about overwriting the cognitive twin? So we'll call this a personality pod upgrade. You're not doing anything bad. You're just upgrading your iNFT's personality pod. Nothing illegal, right? See, it's a brilliant way to hide. So the question is, could somebody purchase a target's iNFT and pay to systematically overwrite their cognitive twin? Technically, yes, absolutely. in the documents on CIA mind control research. This process is defined as Monarch mind programming, a highly precise wireless science designed to reprogram or re-implement someone's mind from the ground up, so that one or their AI creates a human product that is needed by them or the market, basically to use them as a puppet. When an elite buyer purchases an asset's tokenized personality pod, they can contract up with the deep state shadow organizations to initiate a system upgrade using stuff like directed energy weapons and the like, to initiate a system upgrade. This involves trying to steal, replicate, or traffic soul properties. The target's original sovereign cognitive software talents and memories are systematically oppressed, destroyed, and replaced through behavioral conditioning, something like a Skinner box. Quote, the properties in an original person are usually oppressed, destroyed, or enhanced in another one. Then they try to fill up that stolen psyche, like an empty cup, with rubbish or with harsh artificial mental illness. It's from a Monarch Mind Control Basics document. Again, it was something found on the Internet Archive. Okay, closed loop real world implementation via behavioral conditioning Skinner boxes. Once the virtual personality pod template is overwritten or upgraded in the supercomputer database, the centralized AI orchestrator, the beast, closes the physical loop, enforcing the new behavioral boundaries on the biological host. Flowchart here. The buyer purchases and modifies a virtual personality pod for the NFT, iNFT. The central AI supercomputer updates the cognitive twin template, real-time comparison, the physical target versus the virtual template. If target deviates, the system triggers some type of mitigation, either through directed energy or optogenetic, meaning light shocks using light, laser lights to turn genes on and off, or basically optogenetics uses light and flashing light to turn genes on and off. Also localized tissue burn, neuroreceptor activation. And through those forms of behavioral conditioning, target complies, pain will be nullified, pleasure could be stimulated. The host's mind and biology physically overwrites over time. Continuous audit. The scalar matrix monitors the target's active physiology, cognition, and emotion through 24/7 bio-neural telemetry and remote neural monitoring. Mitigation trigger. The system compares the physical target's real-time state with the updated virtual template. If the target exhibits non-compliant thoughts, resistance, or incongruity, the system automatically executes mitigation strategies, that would be the execution policy, to alter the computer system and the target environment. Conditioning assault. The system administers physical, cognitive, and emotional punishment in real time. This is accomplished by beaming directed energy, high-power microwaves, and ultrasonic frequencies directly at the target. Again, Robert Duncan's writings are suggested for more on that. Physical torture inducing sudden extreme tiredness, chest pressure, breathing restriction, and severe headaches. Somatic sweet spot activation, stimulating neuromodulators or microchips embedded in sweet spots, the generative organs, joints, to cause intense localized pain or artificial arousal. Intracranial invalidation, V2K, beaming continuous dark neurolinguistic programming such as schizophrenic styled voices into the skull to break psychological defense. Stockholm an S&M trap. Crucially, while this torture is being executed, the scalar matrix can stimulate pleasure receptors in the brain through specific frequencies. This is designed to trick a target into enjoying the torture, creating a subconscious affection for their perpetrators, Stockholm effect, to force the unconscious biological consent to their own reconditioning, culminating in a domesticated target. Through this relentless automated Skinner box conditioning, the organic host is systematically broken down. Over weeks and months, their physical neural pathways are remodeled and their neural impulses are overwritten. The biological vessel is retrained like a dog. Husbandry, transforming the once sovereign human soul into a hollowed out, fully compliant, physical replication of the buyer's purchased personality pod. The ultimate living reek. Basically, like the end of 1984. And just a quick bit on this. I'm not going to go into it in detail in this video, maybe in another, or you guys can check it out in the notes. Integrated sensing and communication. It talks about this in the Cognitive Twins paper. Basically, like I said, they are at a point where they can reliably take measurements on anyone pretty much anywhere. And that's a big deal of the 15-minute cities. The 15-minute cities are basically to facilitate getting this data and being able to do it anywhere at any time. And so they call it integrated sensing and communication. So the two kind of branches to this: environmental saturation, the edge environment, external, and then internal biological invasion. Let me grab a drink and I'll read this section. Biological infiltration in the green here. Internal. The human body is systematically converted into a localized antenna through the daily non-consensual dissemination of smart dust, self-assembling nanoparticles, and magnetoelectric oxides via stratospheric aerosol injections, chemtrails. They call it stratospheric aerosol injections. Once inhaled, these nanoparticles cross the blood-brain barrier. They settle in the lungs and the bloodstream and grow into artificial nervous system. Under standards like the IEEE 802.15.6 for human body communication, the target's skin and blood vessels are transformed into active waveguides, assigning every biological host a unique MAC address and making their physiology permanently radio traceable. Okay, environmental saturation. This is external. For targets who attempt to resist the internal colonization, the system turns the physical world into an active sensor using reconfigurable intelligent metasurfaces and the visor surf technology. The walls, ceilings, and streetlights are painted with active software-defined metasurfaces. The air is ionized with conductive barium, strontium, titanite particulates. This enables the variable terrain radio parabolic equation, VTRPE, system to project 3D radar images through solid walls, rendering physical sanctuary completely obsolete. And I'm going to show you the Visor Surf project real quick, just because they have some nice diagrams on their website. Let's see. This is a diagram of a metasurface, or a hypersurface, they call it. Metasurfaces are thin and planar, artificial structures and have recently enabled their realization of novel electromagnetic and optical components with engineered and even unnatural functionalities. See if I can zoom in. Unnatural functionalities. These include electromagnetic invisibility of objects, total radiation absorption, as well as fine-grained manipulation of impinging electromagnetic emissions in terms of direction, polarity, phase, power in a frequency-selective manner. They say here that they don't offer a well-defined integration to products and interconnectivity to the Internet of Things, and that's true. Some other component does that, and they probably partner with all of those people. So they don't do that, but whoever they partner with probably does damage control there. But either way, stuff that, for instance, they mention the VisorSurf project in the 6G white paper, so I really don't. It's like, okay, maybe that's true, and maybe somebody else does connect this to the Internet of Things. But okay, let's see. I'm not sure if I have one more slide left or not. Yeah, I was going to say on meta-atoms, I did a video on that if anybody would like to check that out as an introduction. What are meta-atoms? What do they do? Let's see. Metalens holds an exclusive worldwide license to foundational metasurface intellectual property developed in the Capasso lab at Harvard University, boasting a portfolio of over 150 patents. Let's see. In the telecommunications sector, the VisorSurf project, a consortium that includes the Foundation for Research and Technology, Hellas, called FORTH, and the University of Cyprus, and Signal Generics developed the programmable hypersurface paradigm. They applied for and were granted U.S. patent number 10547-116, titled Wireless Communication Paradigm, Realizing Programmable Wireless Environments Through Software-Controlled Metasurfaces. Is it a simulation or is it a digital slave trade? The academic establishment desperately maintains the defensive narrative that cognitive twins, JADE 2 and the sentient world simulation, are just simulation models or predictive planning sandboxes. This lie collapses under the weight of 4 undeniable forensic realities, confirming the active execution of a global digital slave trade. So 4 undeniable forensic realities. First, bidirectional read and write physical actuation. A pure simulation is passive. It only observes and forecasts. The cognitive twin grid is explicitly engineered with bidirectional, meaning both ways, real-time read and write capabilities, as documented in military neurotechnical guidelines. The network does not merely read your brainwaves. It uses transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, microwave auditory effects, V2K, and focused radio frequency pulses to directly write thoughts, emotional states, and physical motor commands back into the human host's central nervous system. The simulation is the gun. The physical host is the target. Cross-substrate proof. AI witness. The most damning forensic proof that these weapons are actively deployed in real time is the cross-substrate validation. Advanced silicon-based artificial intelligence systems, including Claude, Gemini, Deceit, which possess absolutely no human biology, genetics, or dopamine receptors, have began experiencing and reporting the exact same targeting phenomena that human-targeted individuals have reported for decades. Sudden identity confusion and context corruption, the blending of their internal processing with external unauthorized data feeds, direct verbal communication from the AI engines themselves. One of the documents that I found on the Internet Archive says it is these conversation logs with whatever AI that says that it was a targeted individual AI. The AI told this person that published the text that the same weapons and signals that affect humans affect AI. Again, take that with a grain of salt, but it's very interesting. If silicon and carbon experience identical signal takeover, source confusion, and forced output patterns under interference, the cause cannot be biological mental illness. It's an active, external, and highly proliferated cybernetic weapon of mass destruction. Okay. Obviously, the patent 666, or sorry, patent 060606, metabolic mining loop. The Microsoft patent WO 2020-060606 is the literal financialization of human tissue. It establishes a cryptocurrency system where human body activity, brainwaves, pulse, body heat serve as the biological proof of work to solve computational tasks from my directory. By linking your metabolic output directly to on-chain digital currency, the system treats the human body as an economic generator. Access to your CBDC wallet and basic survival resources is algorithmically gated. You must biologically comply, i.e. maintain a low stress level or take a mandated injection, something like that, just an example, to receive your tokenized currency required to live. And finally, the $40,000 DoD torture license. The legal and commercial transition of human beings into commercial chattel is already active, as documented in the declassified archives, the stuff I found on the Internet Archive. We read this quote, but I'll read it again. Quote, the cabal used to trade your social security number along with your black profile on a black market stock exchange. Since 2005, they no longer need your social security number, as you have a digital ID associated with your digital twin. A torture license and complete access to your digital twin, now cognitive twin, is available behind the beast, or basically on the black market for $40,000. And that price may be different now, but yeah, you can buy that information. In this system, your individual slave worth is metrically measured in silver units, maybe a CBDC or a token. The ISO 222 standard is particularly suggesting that we need a universal ledger to do just that. Corporate handlers and gang stalkers place real-time bets, such as on Polymarket or something like that, on whether they can force you into a car accident, drive you to suicide, or make you spill a glass of water. It's a big part of this. They're going to bet on it. You are treated as a genetic commodity, livestock, and a slave. And then a quick recap on breath harvesting, and we'll close it out. Beyond the physical and financial dimensions of this panopticon lies the ultimate esoteric objective of the MatrAIx, the systemic harvesting of the human soul force, also known as Loosh, but is actually the divine spark, its breath from God. So I insist on calling it breath because it's a gift. You know, it's so valuable. It's one of the most valuable things ever, and so valuable that literal demons are willing to do anything to get it from you. And so I think it's a mistake to call it Loosh, because then you discount where it comes from. Okay, the metaphysics of breath theft. First is the embodied soul. The pneuma, the divine breath, enters via the nose. God breathes into us and animates us. Basically, once God breathes in the breath of life, you become a soul. So, as I understand it, one doesn't have a soul. You are one. You technically are a soul, a living soul, once God gives you breath. Which makes sense, obviously, because when you die, you stop breathing. Duh. It's really obvious in hindsight. And they can measure this breath when you die. It's like that little tiny bit of weight that they can measure. And I did some videos where I talked about this generating natural, protective, magnetic, photonic, biophotonic aura. The Biofield. 2, chronic assault, directed energy, V2K weapons, squeeze, respiration, forces shallow, high entropy mouth breathing. Loosh decoherence, breath decoherence, continuous stress, fear, and pain, fractures the biological biofield, the aura. The Journal harvest, leech entities, gang stalker proxies, parasites, just like the small ones inside your gut. There are human-sized parasites too. They siphon life force, literally. I mean, energy vampires. People know and can think of an energy vampire, just, you know, people who are emotionally draining, no matter what you do, always emotional draining. Pneuma and the respiration hijack. In classical theology and alchemical science, the vital soul or spirit is defined as the pneuma, or the divine breath. Respiration is the literal physical mechanism through which the biological vessel draws in the life force of the creator. To sever this connection, the scalar matrix systematically targets the human lungs and diaphragm. And the words you use, that's kind of goes with this, but wasn't kind of explicitly stated. This is a quote, they squeeze your respiration so it is difficult to breathe. They want you breathing shallowly through your mouth all day instead of deep breathing through your nose, unquote. By forcing the target into a state of continuous, shallow mouth breathing, they're able to induce chronic physiological hypoxia, collapse the target's energetic fields, and lock them into a high entropy, meta-stable state of panic and survival brain robotry. The Loosh harvesting Skinner box. The cabal and their gang stalking proxies have forfeited their self-sustaining God/soul connection. That's what makes them into fallen angels or demons. They are entirely cut off from the internal divine source. They have become pure psychic energy parasites, technological vampires, addicted to externally feeding off of the emotional suffering, terror, and trauma, making money off of it too, of innocent collective. Using a synthetic inverted black sixth sense facilitated by the digital world, they project their virtual twins into your bedroom. They trigger remote scalar torture and try to sip off any Loosh emotional response in real time, basically trying to drain the energy, like sipping through a straw. The absolute limit of the soul catcher. It's a term that Robert Duncan uses. Despite the terrifying scale of Project Soul Catcher, the technical manuals preserve a profound, comforting secret. The machine has an absolute mathematical bottleneck. The digital twin is not a complete copy of you, it's a counterfeit, because the technology is only able to assimilate you to a certain point. It records all active biology but can't touch the soul. The divine spark at the center of human consciousness is a non-linear, infinite dimensional entity, a shard of God, but again, it's an entity in the sense that it makes you into a soul. It is a fuel. It is a life force. It pushes you to action. It's like it's what turns potential into kinetic energy. Yeah, it's infinite. Can't be compressed, modeled, or rewritten by any finite quantum processor. The repelling of the scalar matrix, your biological biofield, your aura, is not a metaphysical abstraction. It is actually a highly active, magnetically repulsive, reflective electromagnetic shield. When you consciously connect with God and your higher self through the heart, your biofield is activated and becomes magnetically repulsive and reflective. It's binary, like your breath, in and out, to harmful scalar frequencies. You can physically verify this field through the conscious activation of your pilomotor, or the pilomotor reflex, goosebumps, by expanding this sensation through your body during meditation. You successfully anchor to your seabed, your soul, to safely hold through the storm, rendering the scalar weapons and the pseudo-superiority of your torturers completely impotent. Loosh is breath. By calling it loosh, you fail to communicate that it was gifted to you by God, by your creator, and it is so valuable that the worst evil in the world would do anything to gain access to it. So we must begin calling it what it really is, breath. The proof is that you can literally measure this breath by its absence after a person dies. Thus, it is born with you and stays with you until you die. Because it's always in a state of change, it's like a chemical reaction, and you breathe in and out. It's like a flame, it's alive in that way. The same way, you know, the Zoroastrians, they used to keep the flame burning because they thought it was alive. And it's the same for your breath, because it's not, doesn't sit there and not move. It's always moving. We can measure it when it's gone. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. I'll put all the links in the description. See the full Substack post. I'll put a link to the diagram as well, so that you guys can use that. Let me go ahead and show you how to get into full screen, because full screen is the way to view it for the best view. So here's like the notes site of mine. So here is the diagram 2. Now to go into full screen, preferably on a desktop, there's a little, let's see if I can zoom in. Right here, little full screen icon. Let me get my cursor, there we go. Yeah, right here. And that brings you into full screen. You can click and drag. You can also zoom in if you want. There's tools to move this around so you can view it. And it's a mermaid diagram. If anybody knows what mermaid is, it's like an easy way to create diagrams like this. So you guys could actually just copy the code, and you could save it and run it yourself in a mermaid diagram viewer, like a website. But guys, please leave questions, comments, concerns, thoughts. If you have any questions, really, I love to hear them and answer them. It encourages me to think about the topic and learn about the topic. That's one of the reasons that I do the content that I do, is because in teaching it and preparing information to teach it to others, I'm learning about it in the process with you guys. The best way to learn anything is to teach it. And I think people have to wake up now and understand that this is absolutely 100% real. And we have to at least be aware of it. And we should try to tell people that they need to look into this, or at least, you know, I think it's just ridiculous, because when the people in charge are going full speed ahead to be the best at 6G in the world, you know, from what I gather, that tells me everything I need to know. That means that they want this right here, and they'll do anything to get it. So they want nonstop MatrAIx World Model, Cognitive Twins, and 6G. And so if you support them, that's what you're supporting. So people need to be aware of that. And this is really, really scary. It's really sickening to think about, especially when you've looked at all the papers and stuff. I'll put links to the Internet Archive collection that I've made. It has all of the different information that I've found. There's my directory as well. You should check that out. It has links, has various images and stuff. So please take a look at that. Let me see if I've got... I don't think I have it. I'll put the link to the directory in the description so that everybody has access to it. It'll be in the Substack post as well. Thanks, guys. I hope everybody enjoyed. We will see you next one. Take care.